As a raging film nerd who also happens to have a film commentary YouTube channel, I'm oftentimes asked what movie or which director initially sparked my interest in the medium, and this has honestly become a question that I dread answering because the truth is a little embarrassing. M. Night Shyamalan is the director that got me into film. Now, I know, he absolutely assaulted all of our childhoods with that abomination of an Avatar movie, and has released quite a few stinkers over the years. But if I can take you back to the early 2000s, this guy was unironically being labeled as the next potential Steven Spielberg. Yes, you heard me correctly, that is a thought people actually have. And his first two movies are both brilliant in my opinion. The Sixth Sense is my favorite horror film of all time, and Unbreakable is a super thrilling ride, and is honestly a top 15 favorite film of all time for me as well. But when you tell people that M. Night was your gateway into thinking about cinema critically, they don't think of his first two masterpieces, or even Signs or Split, which are both also good outings from Shyamalan. No, they think about After Earth, Lady in the Water, and The Happening. And it stings, man. I think M. Night is such a talented director, but he constantly is letting me down and making me look like a fool for propping up his skills as a filmmaker. It is mind-boggling to me that the same man who directed and wrote The Sixth Sense could then also come out with something as horrendous as The Happening. Like, The Happening is ironically one of my favorite comedies of all time. I think it is laugh-out-loud hysterical. The only problem is, well, it's supposed to be a horror film. Just tracking the history of M. Night Shyamalan, he started out on two incredible highs with The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, and then released Signs, which I think is a great film up until the last act. The twists don't really make that much sense, but I've always been able to look past this, and I think Signs in general is still solid, and a masterclass in building suspense. But not being able to land the ending would become a persistent issue throughout the director's career, and is even more present in The Village. The Village, in all honesty, is probably the movie I'm most conflicted on within his filmography, because there's some really great ideas here, and the first 2/3 of the runtime is pretty good, but as soon as we start getting answers to the mysteries he built up, the film just absolutely crumbles, far worse than Signs even. And the third act collapse of The Village began what I look at as the dark age of M. Night's career, where we then proceeded to get Lady in the Water, The Happening, The Last Airbender, and After Earth. And all of these movies suck. I won't sugarcoat it, I'd be hard-pressed to find much redeeming about any of them. And at this point, it really felt like Shyamalan's time of making good movies had long passed, as critics were ready to put the final nail in his coffin as a director. But then came The Visit, and I wouldn't say The Visit is a great film, but it is my favorite found footage style horror movie of all time. Not necessarily a high bar to clear, but it was a start. I think what aided The Visit was the fact that the twist was rather obvious, so when it actually came time to reveal it, well, I was just happy that it wasn't some other convoluted reveal that didn't make sense. So going into Split, I, for the first time in a long time, had some excitement to see an M. Night Shyamalan film. And Split did not disappoint whatsoever. I think it is a great horror experience, with a magnificent performance from James McAvoy, and the reveal that this was actually a prequel to Unbreakable sent me through the roof. He was finally back. The director who got me into film in the first place finally returned to form. And I can vividly remember the build-up to Glass being released. I definitely forced multiple friends to watch Unbreakable, and passionately told them that while yes, M. Night had a rough slump, he was actually a great director who made a return to form, and that Glass was going to solidify the East Rail 177 trilogy as one of the best of all time. And then Glass came out, and it was mid. Glass was essentially the movie equivalent of Blue Balls. It kept building up and teasing potentially interesting things to ultimately end in the most anticlimactic way possible, and this unfortunately began the current M. Night Shyamalan era that we're in, the had potential era, or the Blue Balls era if you will. Glass, Old, Knock at the Cabin, and Trap, the last four M. Night Shyamalan outings, are all perfectly mediocre. They all had somewhat interesting premises, but then managed to end in such a way that just leaves you feeling unsatisfied. It's hard to even explain, but all four endings just fell completely flat for me. I wouldn't call any of these movies horrible, but I also don't think they're good or memorable either. We seem to be truly stuck in the middle with current form M. Night, and it just leaves me frustrated and even more conflicted as a fan. I almost prefer the Dark Age era because at least that was a time where my faith and anticipation for the next M. Night Shyamalan movie was at an all-time low. Now it's like I'm in an endless cycle of feeling frustrated with him, but then a new trailer drops, and it has an interesting premise, so my hopes grow a little bit, and then I start watching the movie, and it begins pretty well. Grabs my interest, and has me going along with it, to then end in a lame way that leaves me feeling disappointed, only for the cycle to continue. Now, I didn't make this video to just rag on M. Night Shyamalan. I honestly am still rooting for him, and I hope his next film is great. But I just have never experienced anything like this with any other director. The shift in quality from film to film is astounding, and as a fan of the man who also happens to make film commentary videos, I thought this was a naturally interesting topic to dissect and in all honesty vent about. Because from his golden era, to his crap era, to his resurgence, all the way to his current blue balls era, I've been a hardcore fan of M. Night, and it has been a fascinating and frustrating ride. Well, if you made it this far, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, feel free to drop a like or subscribe, and let me know, how do you feel about M. Night Shyamalan? Are you a defender of his like me? Or do you perhaps still hate him for ruining The Last Airbender? Until next time, peace.